Welcome to another LinkedIn Live with Well Workplaces, and I'm your host Tom, and today I'm chatting with Lizzy Williamson from 2 Minute Moves. Lizzy, how you going?
Hello, so good. Thank you for having me.
I love that you're standing up there. I can tell you're standing. Yeah.
Can you? Because I'm sort of doing a few little moves.
That's it. Yeah, you're ready to dance. I love it because it's 10 o'clock, and I think for a lot of people, they've done a couple of hours of work and they're maybe just getting a little bit stiff and sore. So having that option to stand up is brilliant. Lizzy, I've got a little story for you just to set up our chat. Yesterday, my wife was on this virtual call. It was about 3 hours, and it was a conference for her work, and it was quite funny because everyone prior to the training, it's a big company-wide training, they were like, oh, we'll have lots of digital breaks and we'll stop regularly. Meanwhile, I'm in here in my backyard in the office here, going in and out to the kitchen so many times. I reckon I had 10 breaks in that 3 hours just because I can't sit still, basically. She's in there and basically they thought they were going to have all these breaks, and by the end of it, after 3 hours, they only had a 6-minute break for the whole period of time because everyone was running late, and because of the virtual sort of setting, everyone thinks they're efficient, but they start rambling on and things get, meanwhile I'm walking back and forth, and by the end of the day, she was just looking very, very somber, very stiff. She actually had a sore back and looked pretty fatigued.
That's no good.
It's terrible, I know. And I thought of you instantly after that because I knew we were having a chat. And last week I had a chat with Dr. Natalie Flatt, and we were talking about the concept of languishing. So it really fits in today where I've called this session really Re-Energise Your Workday with Lizzy. So I think what I'd love to I guess ask you firstly to kick it off is how did you get into this space, and I guess your story as to how you ended up doing what you do.
Yeah, I got into this, I think like a lot of people, there's something that you do when you're younger that really lights you up. And I always love listening to Ash Barty's mindset coach, Ben Crow, and he talks about what is that early memory that you have that it gives you this feeling that really makes you understand who you are. And the memory of me is on my veranda, my house in a little country town in Gympie, Queensland, and I'm there on my veranda and in a funny little costume, leotard and stuff, and I am dancing. And I remember this just having this feeling of joy, of freedom, and of fun and positivity. And so I often think back to that little girl and think, gosh, isn't it amazing that I have now ended up doing a job where I get to feel those things every day, and my mission is to help other people feel those things. So it was always my ambition to be a professional dancer. One, I felt like it was going to get me out of my little country town. I was desperate to get out of there and get to Sydney and the big smoke. And two, because it was my passion, it was my love. So that's what I did, and I got into dance school in Sydney and became a professional dancer and danced around on cruise ships and was a gigging dancer. And then I had children and things really changed for me then. I went through a pretty dark time, and that's when I discovered how powerful exercise could be on your mental health. And so that's when I started this journey of, okay, how can I help people change the way they feel through movement, but not necessarily exercise as we know it, but how can you do it by taking little moments, integrating little moments in your day? And then I would be talking to people who were sitting down all day, like your wife is, on meetings. This is even pre-COVID, in pre-working from home. People were sitting for so long. And I started to think, gosh, if I could somehow make it easier for people to get up more in their day, to bust a bit of the mindset that so many of us have around what exercise has to look like, has to be an hour, we have to get out of the house, have to have a certain location, then I think that could really help people change the way they feel when they're working, how they can help not only their bodies, but also their brain and their happiness levels at work.
I love it. Well, what a great story. And I think, that transition from I love that you've brought it back to your childhood memory, and also focusing on what you really loved. I mean, when you were saying that, I started to think about myself as a kid, and I used to play I fell in love with basketball probably because of Michael Jordan and that sort of era. And I would literally be out in the in the front yard shooting hoops like till in the rain and everything. I'm thinking that I would one day be an NBA player. I'm about 2 foot short for that, but anyway, it was a dream. And so for me, when you were saying how passionate you are about that, I kind of think, when at the moment, if I need a break, I'll actually want to go play some basketball, and it kind of probably stimulates some nostalgia as well, which is great for the brain to bring on some nice feelings of happiness and contentment. So, and when you also mentioned just the transition from being a performer or a dancer and then into motherhood, and then finding that a challenge. I think that's probably a very common, thing right at the moment, and has been for years. Is that, what's your experience in that with your friends and family and that kind of thing?
It's really interesting because at the time, and I know a lot of people feel this way, it can be easy to forget that other people are feeling what you feel. Sometimes we think we are so alone in what we're feeling, that we're the only ones not coping, the only ones struggling, the only ones not finding this motherhood or parenthood or work, whatever, easy. And that's how it was for me, actually. And it didn't help that I kept it such a secret, that I didn't tell anyone the extent of my darkness and my feelings, because I had postpartum depression, perinatal depression here. And so I kept that to myself. And I think if I had spoken up and told other people, rather, I looked around at all the other mums and thought, oh, well, you're all coping, you're doing this great, there's something wrong with me because I'm not coping, I'm a bit of a failure at this. And so it became a very shameful secret. But if I was to have spoken up, I know that other people would have said to me, oh yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like that too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. Yeah, it's a it's a common one, more common than what we think, and it sounds like through that period of time, you've found, I guess, through that you also took yourself back to that little, the little girl that had fun dancing, and maybe through that period of time, is that where you started the concept of the 2-minute workout? Was that kind of where it came from in that sort of period of time where you were struggling?
Yeah, that is so true. I didn't realize it, but I did take myself back to that girl in her garage in Gympie without a door, and every morning, an hour before I had to go to school, I was down there on my ballet bar. And after I had finally gone and seen my doctor, and she gave me my treatment options, and she said to me, you need to do what they tell you to do when you get on a plane, and that is put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others. And so that was the moment that I really realized that I had to dig very, very deep to get the motivation, the grit, the determination to find something that could be my oxygen mask. And that's when I decided that it was going to be a home workout. And of course, in my head, I thought it was going to be a 20-minute home workout. And I put on an episode of Sesame Street for my girls and went, right, let's go. I'm going to do this big workout. It's the last thing I feel like. I'm just going to do it. And, if you are a parent, as soon as you start doing something for yourself, it's like this alarm and radar goes off to your kids. She's doing something. So they screamed out, and all I got was a couple of minutes. But in those couple of minutes, I put my hands on my kitchen bench and thought, right, this is my ballet bar. Do some moves. You can do it. You don't feel like it. I know it's so hard. I know. And it's funny to think now how hard it was then, but I find it so fascinating that, of course, that when you are in a bad mental state, that exercise is one of the best things you can do. That's what everyone tells us. But in the moment, in that time, it can be so, so hard to actually do it. And that's what I experienced. But I went back to that ballet bar and I did a few minutes of of movement. That's all I got. And that's probably actually all I could bring myself to do. But I really remember that feeling of going, okay, I can do this again tomorrow. You can do this. You can do 2 minutes. Just do that. And so that's what I did the next day, the next, and the next. And that little step was what led to the ripple effect of getting more help, of talking to more people, of sharing what I was going through, all the pieces of the pie when it comes to our mental health. But certainly that daily moment of exercise played such a big part of that.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, to be honest, because you're right. When you are in a rut of no exercise, or you're in a rut mentally, one of the first things of advice that we always give, I'm a physiotherapist by background, it's always like, all right, let's get moving. And I guess in our heads, we always think, oh, we know the recommendations are it's got to be an hour, and it's got to be, rigorous exercise, and you've got to get a sweat going and all that. And so it kind of gets built up to be this big thing. And when you're starting all the way down at the starting line, it's too much. It's too much to think about. And those just starting with a couple of minutes, like what you had done and how you've talked about it there, it obviously was enough to get that sense of I've finished this, so I've achieved something. Good on me, Lizzy. And you probably, through that internal dialogue in your head, you would have been like, good work, you did this today. And that would have got you into the next day, and you would have started and built on that each day, creating, that 2-minute workout. But obviously from that, you created a habit as well of exercise. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's right. And rather than getting into bed that night and going through all the things I didn't achieve, and I mean, I was still doing that, but I could also, and all the things I wasn't doing right, but I could also then say, but you know what you did that little moment for you, and it was very powerful. And I really did realize, gosh, I am in this all or nothing mindset when it comes to exercise. And then as I went on, I realized so many of us are, and we are very set in the exercise rules that, like you say, it has to be this certain time, location. If I can't get out for a walk today, so I do nothing, rather than think, you know what, I could actually have a walk on the spot right here, right now. But for some reason, we are very stuck in a certain mold when it comes to exercise and a certain mindset.
Yeah, great. And I've seen some of your workouts through your social media. So if you're listening or watching this on LinkedIn Live, head across to 2 minutes to the 2minuteworkout.com.au. Is that the right website?
2minutemoves.com. But you'll find, if you put into Google 2 minute moves, you'll find it.
Yeah, and just for the listeners there, if you go on there and have a look, you'll just see some really, I guess, easy things to do in the 2 minutes. That's all you need. And I guess for everyone at the moment in Australia that's listening live or has a listen to this, for context today, Melbourne's in its 6th lockdown. Lizzy, you're in Sydney, aren't you? So still in lockdown there. And I know this is by chatting with a lot of people, friends, family, colleagues. Exercise is at the moment, it's one of the easiest and it's cheap, it's free. One of the easiest things you can do for your mental health right now. The problem is we build it up to be this big thing where you need to have your perfect tracksuit on, and you need to sign up to a fancy gym. Lizzy's workouts are fantastic. So please get on there if you are struggling and have a look and have a go. I think they're really inspiring and easy to do. So Lizzy, just in terms of I was talking about my wife earlier as an example, and just that kind of, I guess, like having a break in the working day in a virtual environment is really tricky, or at least I saw that firsthand yesterday, and I hadn't really thought about it too much because I'm not very good at sitting still, so I'm always up and finding any excuse to get out of the chair. There's a little bit of an art and science to it, isn't there? What do you think creates, what's your advice around crafting the perfect break in a day? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, our brain is is built to detect and respond to change. It's not actually built to have these long periods of time with these tasks. So the science really shows that if you're wanting to focus better for longer periods of time, then you want to give your brain a micro break. Arianna Huffington's been doing some awesome research on this and what happens when you get to have a little reset. So you take a micro break and what happens with the stress in your brain that builds up for the day, and also how when you come back, you are much more productive. We have got this little powerhouse cell in our brains called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and when we get active, it allows these cells to effectively talk better with each other. It's like a fertilizer for your brain. They communicate better. So it's actually not only for your body, as you heard with your wife and how her back starts to get in pain, which is an obvious thing. If your body is in the same position for a long time, it's going to get stiff, it's going to get tight. And then when it starts to move, it just goes, I hate this. Our bodies are designed to move so they can function at its best. So how do you actually integrate these breaks into your day? I think the first step is to make them really, really small. Think super small, think bite-sized. Think even first of all with your eyes, to be able just to look away from the screen for a moment. A simple turn of your head to one side and then turn your head to the other side. I think we could all get away with doing that for a moment. So you move your neck out of the same position it's been in for a while, and you move your eyes. A nice little body break can be a stretch up both sides. If you wanted to, you turn your camera off for a moment. So you reach up one arm to the ceiling, reach it up to the other arm, and you can hold that one and just look away from the screen for a moment. And what that nice extension and lengthening out of the side of your body does, as you would probably agree, is so nice for your lower back to stretch out the sides of your body. A little moment to stand up, sit down a few times. I think the more we can make this super, super small and not discount these little things actually making a difference, then I feel like they are doable. Now, of course, if you can bring this into your culture, into your meetings, and give people permission to do this sort of stuff, even do it together, well, I mean, I think everyone has a minute or less to do something like this on a meeting. Keep it super small, keep it super simple, and just think, how can I look away from the screen for a moment and how can I move my body in a little way?
I love that. It's so simple, isn't it? And I guess maybe because it is so simple, people then they don't maybe respect. Sometimes they think it shouldn't be that easy, you know. So yeah, really good tips. And I think at the moment, with everyone working virtually or at home, pretty much most of Australia, if you're in a professional sort of setting, you're going to be at home. Compare that to going in and commuting, you know, pre-COVID sort of era. There'd be a commute to work, which would, for myself, I've actually clocked the difference between me commuting into work versus me being at home. And the difference was phenomenal. It was around 6,000 steps difference between me going in versus me staying put. And for me to get those actual steps in at home, it's a concerted effort to get out and walk. It's not it doesn't come from being where I am and walking past my wife and annoying her every 2 seconds. So I think in a home environment, the tips that you've just given are even more important. It's also interesting at the moment, Lizzy,
just on that point for a moment, Tom, sorry, I just want to just quickly interrupt and tell you, I actually just filmed I was thinking about that the other day. So I actually just filmed kind of like a little commute workout that you can do at home, because we do miss out on those moments. So the whole idea of getting in and out of your car or up and down off the public transport. So standing up and down, a quick walk on the spot, like you're late for a meeting, and then a few lunges, like you have to walk up some stairs, or if you've got a little step somewhere in your house, a little step up and down. That is such a great way to not only get your brain and body into gear for your workday and make up for a little bit of that incidental movement that you're lacking, but also it kind of goes, okay, here's the boundary. I'm gone from my home life, boom, here's my little habit I do and the way I move my body before I start my day.
I love it. I love it. Lizzy, with your tips there and the breaks, how often would you, if you're talking to people within the work that you do, are you sort of aiming for a certain frequency throughout the day? Is it every hour, every couple of hours? Any advice there?
It's so individual. I always like to say, what are you currently doing now? And see if you can just take the next little step. If you are doing absolutely nothing right now, if you are sitting in your chair 6 hours, however many hours before you're getting up, find one moment in there that you can move your body in some kind of way. If you're getting up like you are quite a bit in your day, what are you wanting to add in there? Are you doing any strength work? Could you once a day do some push-ups against your wall near your computer before you go and break for lunch? So I really, really like the idea of getting up every half an hour, getting up every hour, and you get the alerts on your watch or your computer, whatever it is, but they are so easy to ignore because we just start to get used to them. Maybe we're in the middle of an email or something like that. So rather, if the alerts work for you, then brilliant. Put them on, at least at some kind of reminder. But if you can attach it to something that you are already doing, so say it's you're dialing up for a meeting. That is a habit that you can get into where, right, I'm going to stand up, stretch my arms up, have a quick little walk or jog on the spot. So like I just did before I came on this podcast, so I could get my brain into gear and sit back down, boom. So maybe it's every time I take a sip of water, I do 10 squats. Every time I send an email, I just do a little look away from the screen, one direction, then the other direction. So that's how habits are formed. We've got the trigger, which might be the sipping of the water. We've got the routine, and then you've got the reward. And like you were saying before, when I was there doing that first little 2-minute moment at my kitchen bench in a really bad mental place, and it was that feeling of achievement, that's a little dopamine hit to your brain. So after you do something, so say you come back after you've walked around and annoyed your wife, and before you sit back down, you decide you're going to do 20 push-ups against the wall. And then you say to yourself, oh, yes, I just did my push-ups, and sit back down. Your brain wants to do that again because you've got that hit of dopamine, you've celebrated yourself. And so I'd say, start with one thing is always my advice. What is one little thing that you can do in your day? When is the time of day you probably need it the most? And set up something that's going to help you, like a trigger, like an alert, or even a nice little thing on your whiteboard or near your computer that you can tick off and go, I've done it. At the end of the week, you've got 7 ticks and you can reward yourself in some kind of way.
I love that. Yeah, it really sort of brings all the behavioral change points together there. That's fantastic, Lizzy. I think you're right about the watches. I've got an Apple Watch where the notifications come up for, move, sit, stand, all those things. And that you're right, they're really, really easy to turn off. And so for me, how I sort of try and hack, I guess I don't really like the word hack, but I try and hack myself by, if I get up to go to the toilet, that I guess I think of the letter T. And then I think, all right, T means 10. So I need to do 10 squats. So then I'll do the squats before I sit back down to my office. So it's just that kind of whatever works. You're sort of saying whatever works for your brain. Like make sure that you link a couple of things together. And the point of celebrating.
Yes, and they so add up as well. Yeah, celebrating is great. Yeah, sorry, you go on.
Yeah, just that the self-talk of like, well done, Tom. That's kind of enough for me to go, all right, I did that. I don't really care how many I've done. It's more just that I've done it. Because I feel like without the self-talk or the positive talk to say, well, you've achieved something for the day. You haven't just sat in an office all day. I feel like at the moment that's especially important because I feel like people are probably, they're kind of languishing a little bit at the moment in their mental state.
Yeah, definitely. And that's science. That what happens in your brain after you've done something like that. It elevates when you actually do something like a bit of a, it's kind of almost like you've run a bit of a race and your hands up and go, yes, did it. Just a little kind of something, whatever that thing is that for you. And also when you're talking about the idea of it's very, very easy to discount all those little things. And I know, really 2 minutes, come on, what is 2 minutes going to do? But if every time that you have thought of your tea, you do your 10 or 20 squats, the end of the day, that could be 100 squats. At the end of the week, you have done 500 squats. So it's really nice to think of it as that effect of, all right, I've done this many today. That doesn't seem like anything. What's it going to be looking like in a week, in a month, and in a year? And I'm going to look back and think, thank goodness I started doing those squats in my day, because look at me now. I'm so much stronger. I'm in this great habit. I've got, stronger glutes. So my back, my core, everything is feeling better just from that one little thing. And I'm so, so glad that I started that habit, because it's taking me in this direction that I'm really wanting to go.
Yeah, really good points, Lizzy. Lizzy, I'm interested in your approach to your own well-being now, given that you've started with, going back the years ago where you've sort of built the habit and pulled yourself out of, with where you were. With your current approach to well-being and exercise now, what does it look like for you each day or each week? Is it really just having those regular breaks, or have you built that up even further from there?
I really use movement now as a tool for my mental health. So I can tell when I haven't moved enough and when I need to move. I can tell if I'm getting crankier. I can tell if I'm getting stressed, more anxious, start to spiral down a little bit. My inner voice isn't in a very good place. And so that's when I know, oh, okay, I need to move. The problem is, most of the time that I'm in that place, just go, I don't want to do anything. I can't be bothered. But what I also have learned is that resistance is the cue to myself that, whoa, I actually must really, really need this now. So even though I don't want to do it, I listen to that and think, okay, that's someone talking who really needs this more than ever. And I know that motivation comes after action. So if I want to feel the motivation, I have to start the action. And because that's what builds the momentum and that's what builds the motivation. So it's a constant reminder to myself, yes, I don't feel like it a lot of the time, but that's my cue. I need to do it, because after I've done it, that's what's going to get me motivated to exercise more, to do more self-care, and also, of course, to be able to bring what I want to bring of myself to the work I do, which I'm very passionate about, but also to have enough energy left for my husband and my children and my extended family and friends. That's really important as well. So what my day looks like is I do really like to make sure that I am standing for some of my day, not all of the day, because it's not just about the standing. It's about the movements. But when I am standing, I find that I do move my body a bit more. But I also got to watch that I'm not standing in the same position as well, because that's not good for us either. I really love to have a bit of an extended time to exercise in the morning, but I didn't get to do that this morning. I've sort of been on back to back with stuff in America. And so before I came on this podcast, I sat on my chair and I stood up with a jump and then sat back down again. And I did that 20 times. And then I had a little fast walk on the spot, like the ground was really hot. And then I rolled down towards my toes and I shook out my shoulders of everything that's been going on with homeschooling and lockdown. I did a little gentle shake of my head and yes, and thought about what I wanted to say yes to, and shook my head what I want to say no to today, and then rolled on up nice and slowly. And so I tend to, I guess, move for my mood and move to get my mind into the state that I am wanting it to be. That might be getting a pillow and having a big punch, some kicks out. It might just to be a nice bit of chair yoga, but I recognize the moments that I need it, and usually recognize it after the fact when I'm starting to spiral down a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, really great. Thanks so much for sharing that, because I think most of us can relate to that feeling of being in the rut and then trying to get ourselves out. I had the same experience with the gyms have been on and off. So through the lockdowns here, and 2 weeks ago, we were able to go back to the gym. I forced myself to that 6 a.m. class because I know that the feeling that I get after the class is amazing. I'm really good to go for the for the whole day. It really energizes me. But gee, that struggle to get myself out of that rut, I guess, mentally that I was in. I knew I needed to go, but I was really just linking the feeling of the behavior that I was going to achieve by exercising. So, and that kind of got me going again for the next 2 weeks. So I was really pleased with that. I knew I just needed to get on a bit of a streak of exercise, but that first one absolutely killed me.
Yeah. I bet that first step is always so hard. But isn't it amazing how much energy that you get from it? And it's so counterintuitive because you need energy to do it. And so often we're tired and we think, I don't have the energy. I'm too tired to exercise. And yet it's amazing how we build the mitochondria in our body, and that produces more energy and supports our energy needs. And then how our heart is able to pump that oxygen, which is energy, more efficiently to our cells and organs and tissues. It's quite incredible what goes on in our bodies when we get ourselves moving. It's like our bodies go, okay, here we go. Now I can get into gear. Now I can produce some energy for you. We don't have to always conserve it because we're so tired.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think if the body had a voice, it would sound exactly like that. Come on, we're going. Let's get into it.
Move. I am designed to move. I'm designed to be getting out there and moving and getting all this stuff done, rather than this modern convenient life where we just hardly have to move at all. We don't have to collect eggs. We don't have to chop wood. We don't have to do our own washing. We don't have to do anything like that. It's so easy for us to be so sedentary.
Exactly. Lizzy, I'd like to just ask you a couple of more things around the future of work now. I think if we just talk, I'm really interested in events now, and kind of that story I shared with you at the start with my wife. I guess that's one workplace, right? And I'm thinking, well, that's happening globally right now, where people are setting up these big events and they're talking it up. Oh, we'll make it fun, and we'll have breaks, and we'll do all this cool stuff. But the reality is that the experience for the user or the attendee is actually kind of average. And it sounds like with some of the work that you do, you're involved in events. What's the future of events look like, do you think, Lizzy?
When I first started doing what I do is in these energizing wellness breaks for events, it was a tough sell in a way that people would say, what? But there's no way I could do, what is that? No one does that. I don't have time for that. And you talked about your wife's meeting. The agenda just gets jam packed. Now I have been doing a lot of events, meetings and conferences around the world, a lot in the States. Their event platforms are quite next level now, what you go on. And now it is much more recognized for a lot of event organizers that they need to find some really effective ways to help bust screen fatigue, body fatigue, and to keep people engaged. So that's one thing, how people are recognizing it a bit more, that idea of wellness breaks. There still can be resistance of, my agenda is jam-packed there, I don't have time. But I think that the conversation is much more out there about the idea of brain breaks, Zoom gloom, all of that, of how important it is. It is really, as someone who's very, very passionate about movement and knows how vital it is and the science behind what happens when you take a little movement break, it is hard for me to get my head around that there are still meetings going on, that for hours and hours there are no opportunities for breaks, no one leading those breaks. And I really am on a mission to really try and get that so it is a non-negotiable part of a meeting. I think it's great, like I was talking about Arianna Huffington's research, it's great she's pushing that out there, because people go, oh, okay, I see. If I do this, then my people are going to be more productive. They're going to retain all this information. They're going to be more focused. So I think that the knowledge part of it is good. And then it's that, how do you make this really, really easy for people? And when it's really worked, if I can't come on those meetings, is when there is someone there who will lead some kind of stretch break, or say, okay, we're just going to put on some music. You can turn off your camera right now, but this is your time to have a little break and stand up, roll down towards your toes, or just do a little breathing technique or something like that. So I would like to think that the people are realizing more and more now, and that's kind of the swell that I'm feeling, is that it is so beneficial to take these little movement and brain breaks in these meetings. And if you don't have 20 minutes, you don't have 10 minutes, do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 60 seconds? So that's how I would like to see the future of meetings. And definitely when it comes to work and events, when the leadership, when the managers, when those kind of people start to implement this and give other people permission to do it, that's when it can go off. When I've worked with companies, when they start to integrate this inside their culture.
I love it. Yeah. And you're right though, like in terms of events a couple of years ago, certainly they jam it up. But I think this is actually, it might sound like a nice to have thing in your conference, but this is actually essential to keep people keep people thinking at a keep people thinking at a really great rate, keep people contributing at a really nice level, and not creating any environments of burnout. So this is actually really around psychological safety in some ways. I think as well,
duty of care, absolutely. You have a real duty of care to your people. They're sitting at home, working at home on long meetings. Need to take care definitely of their brains. And also there was a lot of research just came out after a couple of months into the pandemic, talking about how workers' compensation claims are expected to skyrocket from how people were sitting at home and their ergonomic setups and all that type of stuff. They're not standing up, losing incidental exercise. And so that is very, very important from the head of a company's point of view.
Yeah, really, really important stuff. We've found in our business, Lizzy, that since the pandemic, or so 18 months later, we're still continuing with the same really engaged organisations with things, really simple stuff like a couple of times a week, some stretching breaks, basically. So the 30 minutes led by our myotherapists or physiotherapists, and it's so simple, but we're getting so many people on them because no one's putting their cameras on. We don't mind. That's actually fine. But their organisation is supporting these breaks, and we're finding it to be the most effective when the leader's on there and actually just talking a little bit at the start to sort of not push the agenda, but lead by example, I guess. So it's not an event, but it's kind of that encouragement that we have this as an option.
Oh, yeah, I see that all the time when the leaders are on the meetings. And I hear from employees as well who at home, and they kind of think, it's almost subconscious that I'm probably not actually allowed to take these breaks. Whereas when they see the leaders on the meetings with me doing these with them, they think, okay, well, my leader is going, this is okay. I actually have permission to take these little breaks. They see how beneficial this is for me. So I probably should start doing these.
Yeah, exactly. Lizzy, I think we've covered some really great points there. And thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. I think for everyone that is listening or watching this, they'll be keen to head across to you and have a look at what you do. I feel like with these movement breaks and the re-energizing effectively your workday, it's only going to get more important as the world evolves to this hybrid workplace where people are working anywhere or at home. And so that there's a strong need for this, basically. And it's great to see you leading the way. If anyone has any questions for Lizzy or myself, please reach out directly on LinkedIn. It's probably the best avenue for us, through the direct message. And thanks to, I've got a couple of comments here. Lisa Tay, I'm saying hi to you, and Christopher as well. Hi guys, thanks for listening. Now we might finish there, Lizzy. Thanks so much for your time and really appreciate it.
Thank you to you, Tom, for having me and for all that you're doing, getting all these fantastic messages out there for people. Hats off to you. So thank you.
No, great. You have a good day and look after yourself.
Let's rock this lockdown.
Let's do it again. Love it. Catch you later. Bye.
See you later. Thank you.